2023, Houthi rebels attacked the cargo ship Galaxy Leader off the coast of Yemen. The commercial ship was hijacked, the crew taken hostage. Was the first in a series of similar attacks. The fighters belong to the Houthi rebel group, a Shia Muslim militia that controls large parts of Yemen. They're well armed and have sworn to fight Israel and its allies. That's put them at the center of an escalating regional conflict. In March 2025, US President Donald Trump ordered a new wave of attacks on the Houthis, warning them that, quote, "Hell will rain down upon you like nothing you have ever seen before." Many Yemenis support the Houthis, even though the group has led the country into a years-long conflict that has destroyed cities, displaced millions of people, and caused untold suffering. How are the Houthis still able to attack ships in the Red Sea? And why is this rebel group picking fights with the world's most powerful militaries? This is the Red Sea, as seen from the International Space Station. It's a region full of crisis and conflict. Over the last 150 years, the waterway between Africa and Asia has become one of the world's most important trade routes, a cargo superhighway. 1/3 of the world's container shipments pass through here, around 1.2 billion tons of cargo each year. But this strategically important superhighway is also extremely vulnerable. That's because of two choke points: the Suez Canal in the north and the Bab el-Mandab Strait in the south. Most ships traveling between Europe and Asia pass through both. They also have to pass by Yemen, one of the poorest nations in the world. The Houthis currently control large parts of Yemen. Since the outbreak of the Gaza war in October 2023, they've been attacking cargo ships off Yemen's coast, saying that their actions are in support of Palestinians in Gaza. The group circulated propaganda videos that went global.
Today, a ship attacked by Iran-backed Houthi rebels.
Salvagers have confirmed the vessel sank.
Yemen's Houthi forces say they will target any vessel associated with Israel.
What's great for the Houthis is that they get to portray themselves as David fighting Goliath. Many in the global south have celebrated these attacks. They've been seen as somebody finally standing up to Israel and to the Western-controlled system in general.
The Houthis took aim at vessels associated with Israel, but the entire global shipping industry has been affected. In December 2023, traffic on the Red Sea fell by around 70%, with many companies deeming the route too risky. They had to take 5,000-kilometer detours, face up to €1 million extra in fuel costs, and it took nearly 14 days longer. The Houthi attacks raised oil prices, disrupted supply chains, and made food more expensive. Shipping by container, long comparatively inexpensive, was suddenly much more costly, with damages in 2024 estimated to be $200 billion.
In the West, especially Europe and the US, the attacks were seen as an attack not only on global trade, but on the Western sense of international order.
The response was swift. An international operation was set up to protect shipping, including months of airstrikes carried out by the US and the UK. But this only seemed to unite the Houthis even more, and the attacks in the Red Sea have continued. Under the many headlines about war and the humanitarian crisis, the real Yemen is often forgotten. A country of breathtaking natural beauty and rich history. Many places bear witness to its past as a cradle of culture and religious diversity. But these days, many places look like this. Yemen's cities have been scarred by years of fighting. The country has found itself at the center of a regional power struggle. The result is that around 4.5 million Yemenis are internally displaced, with many living in camps like this one. Images like these don't often make it into the media because filming is increasingly difficult.
This is me, the tallest.
It's always very complicated to cover Yemen and to film Yemen and to see what's happening in Yemen. It's really a serious thing and you can get arrested. It's always very emotional when you talk to people and do interviews with people, because you ask them about something that they got really hurt from. They're very vulnerable. Sometimes I would do interviews with people who lost their family members by an airstrike, or they lost their beloved one because of a detention.
Yusra Ishaq used to run her own video production company in Yemen. But the Houthis have made independent journalism next to impossible, with censorship, threats, and even violence.
It's not easy, I think, for everybody. Even if you just received a call or just received a news on WhatsApp that somebody that you barely knew was targeted by any political party, that means that you're next. You might be next.
This map is part of Reporters Without Borders' annual Press Freedom Report. Yemen is one of the countries with the most serious threats to journalists. According to a Yemeni organization, in 2024, there were 92 incidents against journalists, including one death sentence. So how did Yemen get here? The country as we know it today has only existed since 1990. Before that, there were two Yemens. One in the northwest, where Zaidi Shia formed the majority in some areas, and another in the south and east, which was traditionally more Sunni. To this day, the country is a fragile patchwork of tribal influences, as well as different faiths and political convictions.
For thousands of years, that wasn't really a problem. The different sects in Yemen coexisted peacefully together.
For around 1,000 years, the northwestern regions were ruled by the Zaidis, a branch within Shia Islam. Their religious leaders traced their lineage back to the Prophet Muhammad. It was from this community that the Houthi rebels, who are fighting today, later emerged. In 1869, something happened that would change the course of history in the region. The opening of the Suez Canal enabled ships to travel directly between Europe and Asia. Suddenly, Yemen and the Bab el-Mandab Strait became vital for global trade.
That was the first time that foreign interests played a really significant role.
Around a century later, in the early 1960s, the course of Yemeni history changed drastically once again. Foreign and local powers toppled the Zaidi monarchy. After more than 1,000 years, the Zaidis lost their power. It was a heavy blow, including for a family called al-Houthi. Then in 1990, Yemen was unified for the first time in its history. But instead of bringing the country together, the process sowed the seeds of future conflict.
Unfortunately, unification was pushed through very, very hastily. A lot of mistakes were made.
The man who presided over Yemen's unification was Abdullah Saleh. Saleh was a cunning politician and received support from both the EU and the US. But Sunni Salafism was also on the rise. Zaidi scholars felt they needed to safeguard Zaidi culture and founded the youth organization Al-Shabab Al-Mumin, the Faithful Youth, in 1992. The organization ran courses, seminars, and youth camps. Then came Hussein al-Houthi, a charismatic religious leader and former member of parliament. He joined the youth movement and increasingly politicized it, calling for an Islamic revolution against the Western-backed President Saleh. From the early 2000s, the group became more radical. They occupied territory and set up checkpoints. This was the beginning of the Houthi movement, named after its then leader, Hussein al-Houthi. The Houthis stood against oppression and Western intervention. They also came up with a slogan: God is great, death to America, death to Israel, a curse on the Jews, victory to Islam.
Hussein al-Houthi was a very charismatic leader. Ali Abdullah Saleh's regime ended up fighting 6 wars against the Houthis between 2004 and 2010. These wars ended in stalemates, but they ultimately led to the Houthis further consolidating their position and gaining a lot of support in the north.
In 2011, the Arab Spring became a watershed moment for much of the Muslim world. A huge wave of protests swept across North Africa and the Middle East. In Yemen, after 33 years in power, Ali Abdullah Saleh was forced to step down in 2012. Vice President Abd Rabbul Mansur Hadi took over as acting president, backed by a Western alliance including Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates. Houthi rebels took advantage of the instability, strengthening their position.
The aim and the task of this transitional Yemeni government was to represent the whole country. But the Houthis didn't feel they were adequately represented in the process. Understandably, they accused the government of containing corrupt members of the old regime. In their view, it lacked the legitimacy to implement the goals of the revolution.
By now, the Houthis also had support from abroad, primarily from Iran. It said Iran supplied the rebels with weapons, including ballistic missiles and drones, something Tehran has denied. In 2014, the Houthis captured the capital Sana'a and advanced to the Red Sea almost without a fight. This marked the start of the civil war. Hadi's internationally recognized government, severely weakened, fled first to the south and later to Saudi Arabia.
This is the so-called hotel government. It based itself in luxury hotels abroad, conducting official business from there. Because it was more or less ruling in absentia, it lost legitimacy within Yemen itself.
The civil war in Yemen had also become a protracted proxy struggle along the broader Shia-Sunni divide. On one side was the internationally recognized government, supported by a largely pro-Western coalition led by Saudi Arabia, a Sunni Muslim state. It carried out brutal airstrikes and naval blockades. On the other side were the Houthis, supported by Shiite Iran and an informal military network, the self-proclaimed Axis of Resistance. And here's where things get even more complex. Offshoots of terrorist organizations such as Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State sought to exploit the instability and establish themselves in the region. Before long, the US began carrying out airstrikes targeting these groups. And, starting in 2018, the UAE began withdrawing its troops from Yemen. Also because Saudi and Emirati strategic interests were increasingly diverging. The UAE began backing southern separatists seeking to divide Yemen into 2 states once again.
We're talking about a patchwork of different actors and different interests. Over time, these interests have become intertwined, but to a certain extent, actors have also chosen sides.
The years of war have brought Yemen to the brink of collapse. One example is Taiz, located between the territories of the opposing forces. It's fiercely contested. There's no functioning water or sewage system, no garbage collection, no banking system, there's hardly any infrastructure whatsoever. Workers at schools and hospitals are no longer being paid. Over 10 years of conflict have led to the deaths of around 400,000 Yemenis, either directly or indirectly. 21.6 million people need humanitarian aid, more than half the country's population. Those whose homes have been destroyed have no choice but to live in camps. These images are from the south. The Houthis make this type of documentation difficult in the north. In this camp, even basic necessities are lacking. Water is a precious and barely affordable commodity.
Actually, children are the most vulnerable groups in this conflict, even if they have sometimes access to education, but it's not that good. They don't have access to good health. They are under trauma. They are having economic issues. They are having family issues, violence, and many things. So they pay the cost, actually.
Maged al-Kholidi's NGO cares for Yemen's children. He hopes to encourage young people to play an active role in the peace process. The Houthi authorities keep a close eye on his NGO, and there are other reasons why his work has become increasingly difficult.
There has been a kind of corruption, either by the community themselves or by the officials who are overseeing the funding and the humanitarian aid. That means nothing will be delivered to those who are in need.
With very little aid actually reaching internally displaced people, they're left to fend for themselves.
My children and I collect bottles. We only get one meal a day. In the camp, there's no humanitarian aid for any of us. We don't know where the aid goes.
Aid supplies are being provided by international organizations, but distribution is hampered by blockades and security concerns. Instead of reaching those who need it most, the aid often ends up being sold on the black market or seized by armed groups. Yemen now ranks second to bottom on the Global Hunger Index. The country's food security situation is described as alarming. And as long as the fighting continues, there's little hope of an end to the humanitarian crisis. In the past, there have been signs that peace could be achieved.
Saudi Arabia apparently wanted to have a dialogue with the Houthis at that time, so we had this ceasefire.
The initial truce only lasted a few months. But it was enough to give the Yemeni people some respite. Hopes rose for a lasting peace. The Chinese moved to act as a mediator between the two major regional powers, Saudi Arabia and Iran. Oman was also involved. The Saudis seemed prepared to make a policy U-turn.
For Saudi Arabia, Yemen eventually became a bit like Afghanistan was for the US. A war had been started, but at some point, no one knew why anymore. They wanted to get out, but they didn't know how to get out of the war without losing face.
But just as there was progress towards peace in Yemen, the situation changed yet again. On October 7th, 2023, Israel was attacked.
Fox News alert, at least 250 Israelis are dead.
Israel has formally declared a state of war.
Israel's aerial attacks on Gaza are intensifying with